everybody. Welcome to a special episode of the podcast. Today we have two guests, and we're going to be covering a really interesting topic, a topic that's very close to my heart and close to our guest's heart. So it is being a parent and being a lawyer. We have Maureen from Uber, who's a senior director. Maureen has two awesome kids and juggles being a parent, a spouse, and also being a senior director at Uber. We also have someone whose name might sound a little familiar. Her name is Karina Margolis. She's my wife. Karina is also an attorney. She's of counsel at a firm called Kaye Bender Rembaum. And she's also a mother to our child, a little boy who's awesome. He's a bit of a handful, but he's a lot of fun. So, guys, if you don't mind, Maureen, if you don't mind starting, just maybe an intro and a little background for everyone listening.
Sure. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me. This is my first podcast, so I apologize if I'm not everything you thought I was going to be. But Maureen Frangopoulos, I'm a senior legal director at Uber. I've been at Uber just under 7 years, which in the tech world, as you may know, is a very long time. I was at a mid-sized law firm in Chicago before joining Uber. I did a variety of transportation litigation. I've always been in the litigation space, started as a trial lawyer at a small firm, turned and burned a lot of trials, went on to a bigger firm and did broader commercial transportation litigation. And that's where I ultimately then landed at Uber, where I've been for 7 years. So always been in the Midwest. I'm born and bred out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and moved to Chicago after law school and been here ever since. So have two little ones, as you mentioned. I was actually 4 months postpartum with my son Michael, who just turned 7 when I joined Uber, and then I had Emma while being at Uber. So she just had her 4th birthday party. So
Karina, if you don't mind giving it a bit of an intro.
Hi, so this is also my first podcast too. But I'm Karina Margolis. As Matt said, I am his wife. This is the first time, doing something like this with him. So I think it's really interesting. I mean, we're both, brand new parents trying to navigate the legal world and trying to, navigate parenting and working at the same time. So after I graduated law school, just as a background, I also started in litigation. And I was doing work for bigger companies dealing with like pharmaceutical issues and things like that. And then after I, decided that I kind of wanted to navigate out of litigation and go more to the transactional side, I started working at my firm now, and I'm of counsel there now after having a baby. I was an associate before. And so I'm doing community association law now. Really a lot of it though is like contract review, basically like construction contract review, things like that, dealing with, the different personalities that come with HOAs and condos in South Florida. So that's always fun. But that's what I've been doing for, the past 3 years now.
I won't speak too far into that, but the personalities aspect.
It's fun.
I'm being selfish because I could speak from personal experience, but fun is probably the best word for it.
Every day is different, I'm sure. So
Exactly.
Oh gosh, yeah, and that's the nature of being a lawyer. I think every day is different, and juggling like being this. And I think there's an image, right, we have to put up front, this very serious, like, lawyer, I'm the authority on the topic. And Maureen, to your point, you had a child, you said your child was 4 months, and then you started at Uber?
Yep, 4 months postpartum, and Michael was actually 8 weeks premature. So he was in the NICU for 6 weeks. And so my maternity leave, half of it was still spent at my old firm, but in the hospital with him. So I actually started applying right when he got home from the NICU to the Uber job. So balancing a premature infant, trying to get the job at Uber, and then transitioning into that role almost right when I got back to my old firm from maternity leave. So lots going on and lots that we had to juggle. I remember actually we were thinking at the time, and Matt, I know I told you that we're actually in the process of moving back to Ohio. But at that time, we were also going to move back to Ohio before I got the job at Uber. And so both sets of grandparents were ecstatic. We're bringing the baby, back to Ohio. And I remember my mom was staying with us at the time, helping with Michael, because we just brought him home from the hospital and dealing with the challenges of a premature baby. And I remember being like, I have a second interview, and telling her, but don't worry, I'm not going to get it, right? And then a third interview and telling her, like, we're still moving back to Ohio. Don't worry. And I just, had to disappoint them all that ultimately I did get the job. So we ended up staying in Chicago. Quickly had to find a place to live, had to find a nanny. And we ended up, we've been here ever since. But like I mentioned, we are in the process of finally moving back home. So the grandparents are once again ecstatic. So I can't ruin it for them now. So
no, I get it. I think you raise a good point too. I think, at least my perception, Karina, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's invaluable when you're working as an attorney and you also have kids, especially young kids, the support system, right? Having people around. Now, for us, we're spoiled. I mean, candidly, on this podcast, my mother-in-law is downstairs.
You're lucky.
So I know, and if you don't have that support, you obviously have to find it somewhere else. And you said you had a nanny, which I'm sure was invaluable to working.
Yeah, and I think just a friend network, and we really built a community here with people that we worked with friends, from college, which is one of the reasons we moved. A lot of Miamians are either from Chicago or go to Chicago. I went to Miami of Ohio in Oxford. I'll put a plug out there for Oxford. We built our own community, but it's been challenging, and it's been something that we've struggled with, because there is still no substitute for family. I think that's in a lot of ways, and my husband and I are from big families. So he's one of 5. I'm one of 4. So my kids have over 10 cousins. I think they're up to like 14 at this point, as there's a couple on the way. And so, it's that pull of wanting them to have that connection and being able to, grow up with family. I think it's super important. My husband's in a big Greek family. I'm from a big Irish Catholic family. And so that's what we're used to. And so our friends have definitely, filled the gap these past, 7 years since having my son. But I think we're definitely feeling that pull now as they're getting older of wanting to give them that experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a challenge. That's definitely a challenge. And I know there's other challenges, obviously, with being both a parent and a lawyer. I mean, Karina, for me, it's almost like I know the answer because I'm there. But Karina, I mean, if you could speak to it, what are some of the challenges you're facing? You've just got back into the practice of law after being on leave with our kid.
Definitely not a break.
So, I mean, what
Definitely not.
I shouldn't say break. I take it back. And motion to strike.
Definitely no.
Definitely not later.
Motion to strike.
I know, right? So I was like Maureen. I also went back to work 4 months postpartum. And I mean, I was lucky that my firm, like I said, I was an associate before. I was, working in the office. But they, we worked out a deal where they let me go of counsel, and I'm working fully remotely from home now. And so that's at least made it, a little bit easier. It is still kind of, hard to bounce especially when they get a little bit older, like work while baby sleeps, or do this, do sleep while baby sleeps. Things like that are, I think, really hard. And a lot of people, tell you that's the best way to go about it. But I think that it is kind of, difficult bouncing things. And I think that you kind of just have to, go with the flow. And at least with me, like Matt and I have a great dynamic. Like if I ever need help with something,
It's really nice.
I'll text him and I'll be like, hey, come downstairs. Like the dog stole a binky and he's like running all over the place. And he's great. It's really helpful that we both, work from home. And then, if I have things that I have to do after hours, we kind of trade off like that. So, I mean, it's definitely been an adjustment, but I think that we're, in a situation where we're really lucky that we have each other and we can, lean on each other during the workday.
Well, you kind of alluded to it, because that's something everyone wants to hear about. And Maureen, I think you know where I'm going, is the work-life balance, right? Talking about balancing doing these things with, right, making sure you're a mom and also balancing working as an attorney. And I mean, we're lawyers, we're inherently perfectionists, we're all the worst when it comes to that. And Maureen, is it fair to say that we can't be perfect at both?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know how I feel about this, that we talked about it a little. I hate the word work-life balance. I think it's elusive. I think it doesn't exist. I think at any time it's a spectrum. And I think we set ourselves up for failure in trying to strive for this like perfect balance that really doesn't exist. I think at times, in being down this parenting journey a bit further than you all with the two kids, especially, you start to learn more and more to give yourself some grace, because I think initially it was, okay, I've got to do this, and if I'm failing at this, I've got to make sure that I'm present for my child, oh, wait a second, but now this assignment's due, and I want to make it perfect, and I want to respond to my clients, whatever, at any given time, but then I'm not there for my child and leaving my child with a caregiver that's not me, right? It was this kind of exercise in the mind, especially with my son, that I'd go through of, I just started a new job, I want to hit the pavement, I want to succeed, but that constant guilt, right? And I think my journey has been, as I've gone along, giving myself a bit more grace. Of it is a sliding, scale, so to speak. It's at one time, I'm probably leaning more into the parenting side. At another time, I'm probably leaning more into work, and there is no balance. It's just, what do I need at that given moment? And I think a lot of what COVID has shined a light on is what's truly important, right? And so how can we have flexibility to be able to lean into whatever side that we want to be in that particular time? If it's, okay, my son's now in Little League, my husband and I just went to his first Little League game yesterday, and I'm going to make that happen, no matter what. So I'm going to carve that out in my schedule. I'm going to make it happen. At that time, I'm leaning more into parent Maureen than looking at my phone, an email and saying, oh no, I need to respond to this. But I think part of it is a mental exercise, because we are type A, we are perfectionists. We those types of people lean into the legal field. We gravitate here for a reason. And I think the mental exercise for me has been being able to say, I'm not going to be perfect at both at any given time, but I also don't need to be, right? I'm still a great lawyer. I'm still a great mom. And I think you really have to give yourself grace. And I also, manage a large team. It's giving that grace to others, right? So I think making sure that we have kind of that mental process that goes into it. But all the conversation about work-life balance, and it's always what, women get asked, especially, what's how you achieve in that work-life balance. It's elusive. It's in my experience, it doesn't exist. Stop striving for it, because you're only going to set yourself up for failure. That's how I feel about it. It's more giving yourself grace and realizing that at certain times you're going to lean into other areas. And especially as a mom, in the legal field, it's finding the right job and the right fit that allows me to lean into both. And I think that's a big piece of it as well. And I think it's still a piece that we struggle with, and I've been able to find it at Uber, but it's something else that I try to champion in terms of finding a fit for you that can be, flexible and that works, because as you all know, as you're going through it, it is such a life change becoming a parent. People are always like, it's hardest going from 1 to 2, in terms of kids. I'm like, it is hardest going from 0 to 1. Like, there is nothing like being able to wake up on a Saturday and brunch in downtown Chicago, and then all of a sudden you're not sleeping and you're up every 2 hours, and like it's the biggest life transition. And so again, I think especially for new parents who are going through it and hearing those words, work-life balance and all of that, and how do you find it, just give yourself some grace and realize that it's an exercise of the mind.
Right. I love that phrase. I feel like I've heard it from so many people since having a baby, give yourself some grace. And it's like, it applies to basically, I feel like, every single situation in life. It's like, like you said, you can't be perfect at every single thing that you do, so you have to give yourself some grace. Or, like the societal pressure on moms to like hop back in tip-top shape, like right after you have a baby, give yourself some grace. So I think that's such a good phrase that's really important for, not only new moms, but, new dads to, work with on a daily basis. I think it's just so important to, remember that, you really can't be your best at every single thing, it takes a lot of stress off of you, at least for me, when I think about things as far as, okay, I'm giving myself an hour to work. I'm gonna, spend this time working. I know Matt's taking care of the baby. I know my mom's taking care of the baby. The baby's fine. I'm gonna use that hour to myself and work. And then when I'm with the baby, I'm, trying to make it's hard sometimes, but trying to take, a mental note of, all right, I'm not going to think about work. I'm going to, give 100% of my attention to the baby. So that's something too that I'm, really, really working at and really, really trying to perfect.
Hard. Yeah. I mean, especially with COVID too, because I used to have to go into the office, as most of us did, 5 days a week. And quickly COVID changed that, where work life, integrated, and all of a sudden there isn't a lot of separation. And so I think that's what we all had to adjust to once COVID hit, is that kind of the world slamming together, where it's hard to compartmentalize. Because I remember I was on a call with a large amount of insurance actuaries. I'm in the insurance space, obviously, and I've got my 2-year-old at the time running in, climbing on my lap, wanting to be a part of the conversation. And they're all kind of staring at me like, what, is that a child? What is that? And it's, that slamming of the worlds together, that we had to adjust quickly. And so I think now we're on the flip side. We're still in a pandemic, obviously, but hopefully on the other side of it. And we're starting to, what are the lessons that have come out of COVID, so to speak? And I think the integration of these worlds, the prioritizing of what matters, and how we can, focus on both and be present for both. I think it's, one upside, so to speak, of what we've all been going through.
This is, I couldn't agree more. I'm smiling during this whole thing because again, I relate as a father here, where Karina, right? I'll be trying to, well, see, maybe I can. See, when I say it out loud, I sound silly, because I'm like, when I'm filming a TikTok, I could pick a different thing. When I'm doing a webinar with a bunch of folks and we're right, and it's live, and we have to do it. And you're right. There are still times where, like, the baby will be sleeping, the baby will wake up, and we'll hear her cry. And Karina and I are both working, and we're at this pause and trying to figure that out. And I think you're right. It's a rhythm you eventually get into.
Yeah.
But we're not perfect. So to everyone's point, like, there were plenty of times I'm sitting here. I'm not going to say filming a TikTok, because again, I keep feeling like I sound ridiculous, but doing something, and I'm like, I'm not giving it my all. I'm not giving it my all, and I want to give it my all. And conversely, like, then I leave from whatever I'm doing to go take care of my kid, and I also don't feel like I'm giving it my all. And to everyone's point again, that's okay. That's okay. You're not, you're right, by sensationalizing and putting all throughout social media and everywhere that a perfect work-life balance model exists is so disingenuous.
Yeah.
And it makes me, you're right, in those scenarios, it makes me so anxious.
Well,
and
yeah, the anxiety is a big piece, and I'm an anxious person by nature. So I think many lawyers are, for whatever reason. Again, we're all type A, we gravitate towards this space. But I think one of the things you said about you're not giving it your all, what I think I've learned through some of this is the other side of whatever whoever you're working with, whoever you're talking to, probably aren't realizing you're not giving it your all. They think you're doing great, or they think you're meeting whatever objective you're supposed to be meeting. It is mental. It is this mental exercise that we really do to ourselves. And I think, parenting, and as you go through the parenting journey, you start to think about that a bit more. I think there's also been, broader discussions about mental health, and it's more, it's open to be able to talk about these things a bit more. And I think that's a big piece of it. But I think the others, that you're working with, or that you're engaging with on a project, they probably think you're doing great. It's your own kind of, again, give yourself some grace and talk yourself off the ledge internally, because I think that is what we do a lot to ourselves, because it goes to that perfectionist nature, that type A, that anxiousness. And I think we absolutely, in the legal field, we all tend to be that personality. I've learned, for whatever reason, we all decide to join the law. But I think it's, again, like coaching yourself through. And I will say, I did a program at Uber. It was called Flagship. I think they call it something different now. It's a leadership program, and I had a coach who was excellent, who I still keep in contact with from time to time. And he was teaching me about coaching others, and he was teaching me about, leading teams. But what I've learned is he ultimately at the end of it was very good at having me coach myself. So I've done some of the exercises and asked myself some of the questions, and look, I'm not perfect. And I definitely, and my husband, if he would come up here, could attest to, I'll have those moments of breaking down, and they happen, more frequently than I'd like. But I think that, again, trying to have those skills of coaching myself through some of this, and that was a great program. If any listeners ever have a chance to do a leadership program like that, or have an executive coach, or have, be able to go down that path, or even if it's therapy or something like that, having somebody that can help you go through a coaching process, because it benefits yourself. It benefits if you're a leader of teams. I found it, super impactful, and I find myself doing certain things, especially relative to resilience. He did a lot of resilience training, and I find myself still using, you'll need a lot of resilience in parenting. So I find myself,
Sure.
using a lot of the skills that he taught. So I think it's important. Again, a lot of this will end up being a mental exercise, that you've got to have those skills to be able to coach yourself, coach your kids, coach your teams if you're a manager, for sure.
I totally agree with that too. And I think on the other side of the coin too, as far as, you're thinking you're not giving it all, as an attorney to, your clients, your supervisor, etc., when really they're, probably like you're doing a great job. I think it's true with, our kids too. Sometimes we feel like, I wasn't, 100% there for my kid today. But I think that to them, we don't realize, especially before they're like teenagers, but they're like, we're rock stars to them, So I think that's important to think
And you
about,
are, and you'll realize you definitely are. And it's funny, I had my yearly follow-ups with all my doctors this week, and I was following up with one. I'm like, I think I'm ruining my kids. She's like, you're not ruining them, because you'll dwell on that one thing, that one, time you yelled at them, or that one mistake, but they'll remember, oh, we went and had a movie night and got popcorn, and what, those are the memories your kids, your child and any future children you may have will dwell on. And again, like for me, and I've got a little sticker on my computer that says Grace Wins. It's this coaching myself, taking deep breaths, and kind of going through that whole exercise, on a daily basis, again, because it's an ongoing journey, and you guys are just starting out in it, which is super exciting. It's a really fun time. But there's a lot you will learn for sure as you continue down your path.
We're changing the name of this episode. This episode is now Give Yourself Grace, because I think that's right. Like,
yeah,
that is such
I'm gonna send you
it's so
one.
powerful.
I've got a bunch of my
good...
stickers. I'm gonna send you one.
Yeah,
Put it on your laptop.
It's gonna be all over our backgrounds.
Yeah,
right. On the fridge, everywhere.
Yeah.
Our kid's gonna learn how to speak. His first words are gonna be "Give yourself some grace."
Yeah.
It's probably that, or like, I think squash. Squash might be his first word. I'm going to segue into a topic also selfishly I'd love to hear about, because I've been the head of legal at a company where folks are going on maternity leave or family planning, and I think there's a lot that is to be said for a good manager who can manage those environments. So I guess, Maureen, I'm sure you've dealt with it, and Karina as well, you've dealt with it as an employee and then as a manager. Do you have any tips for either scenario?
Yeah, I think obviously encouraging it is tip number one, right? And whether it's whether it's the mom or dad, any employee, I think it's encouraging. We're lucky at Uber that we have a great parental leave policy. Everybody gets 18 weeks, no questions asked. And I think that's super amazing. And some of the conversations, it's interesting that I feel like at this point that I'm having with people on my team is encouraging them, go take your leave and forget about it, right? It's a lot of talking through, I'm worried about the team, or I'm worried about whatever. It's like, look, the work will be here. Like, Uber will go on. We will be fine. The work will be here when you get back, and you will never get this time back. I mean, I remember my, both parental leaves, but with Emma, while I was at Uber, like 18 weeks was a dream, and I loved having that time. And I really did forget about work during those moments. I didn't feel the need to plug in. I had a great manager. I have a great manager who's super supportive, and that, allowed me the time to bond with my child. And I tried, not to think about work, and it was great. And so I think that's some of what I'm telling people today is, a lot of times and through the decades, we've been fighting for leave, and people are still fighting for leave at a global scale. Like, we're lucky at Uber. So it's like, take it, enjoy it, and advocate for it for others, I think is a big piece of it, because you won't ever get that time back. I'm sure you all know from going through it, and it's so important.
Karina, what about you? What do you think in terms of being on the employee side? You're having this, you're thinking about having a child, or you're in the, you are pregnant. I mean, I'm sure there's certain conversations you have to have with your employer about, hey, look, I'm going to leave. I have to plan on who's going to be taking over certain parts of my caseload. If you're a litigator, if you're a transactional attorney, maybe certain deals. Do you have any tips?
Right. I mean, as far as, when you're, nearing that 40-week end mark, or nearing when, your doctor says, you're getting close. I think it's just important to, just communicate with your team and, get with them and know, who's going to take over what. So then when you leave, you kind of leave feeling, like everything's taken care of, and that, you don't necessarily have much to worry about. I think that, we are lucky in the legal industry that, working at either, whether it be a company or a firm, that we're, mostly guaranteed, at least the 12 weeks leave. But I think that it's really important to, kind of like for me at least, I wanted to take a week before, and before, I knew I was going to have the baby, and kind of just, get everything together, so I wasn't like working and then my water breaking and running to the hospital. So I think that's pretty important for people too, that are, thinking about their timing of taking leave, that, maybe you should take, a week to yourself to get things together before, you actually go into this, completely life-changing moment.
Yeah. And in that week, right, you can use it also, right, to kind of tell everyone, hey guys, you're taking these cases, or you're taking
right.
Stop texting me.
I know.
That is funny, because I do remember like going to the hospital with my second, which was a planned, it was a C-section, and so we knew she was coming, but I still remember texting, people on my team, like, and by the way, follow up on this, and that kind of urgency of, oh wait, it's now happening, and I'm going to be out for 18 weeks. Make sure you follow up with so and so on X, Y, and Z. I feel like we kind of go through that hectic. Oh, this just popped up on this case or whatever. Make sure that we're following up. And then I think the transition back is a big piece of it too, right? I think it's one thing to advocate for leave and to take leave and that side of it, but I think the transition back is a big piece of it, and I think that's where I've tried to lean in a bit more with my own team of how we make it, an environment that they feel like they want to come back to, because it's not just, hey, now here's these 110 cases, we're going to dump right back on you, on day one. We kind of ease people into it, so we'll soft ramp them up, so to speak. We put together little decks. We try to send them a Starbucks gift card and things like that, because I remember, at least for myself, it was hard, coming back after Emma. You're leaving kind of that safety net and balloon of comfort with your infant that you're spending all day cuddling. And then I remember, I came back to Uber and I had a class action to deal with, and it's like, okay, this is a lot. And I think, and my boss was great, and she was supportive. But I think it did teach me in that moment, because I went through it, right? I think it then was, okay, and incorporating things for my own team members. How can we ramp people up? How can we kind of soft, start them, so to speak, so that it's not, okay, you're back. Whew, let's dump this back all on your plate, because I do think it's overwhelming. Right. I felt overwhelmed coming back from leave. And so I think that's one of the pieces I try to think about now as a manager, is that transition back.
That's
right. So it's not like, we've been waiting for you for 4 months to do this. No one's done it.
Here you go. This case is going to trial next week. XOXO. Let me know how it goes. It's hard.
When I was just before Grayson was born, I remember, Karina, you remember this. We, at one point, I don't know how it ended up being the case, but I think he was due, was he due the 12th?
Mm-hmm.
Karina, do you remember?
Yeah.
He was due the 12th, and I think I I had 5 acquisitions closing, 5 deals closing, multi-million-dollar deals, all of them. Different states, different regulatory regimes in each. And I remember seeing that and almost breaking down. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I was a legal department of 1. And I'll say, if you're in this scenario, if you're listening, lean on your outside counsel. Karina, sorry, because you're outside counsel. Lean on lean on your outside counsel. I utilized a great firm, and actually I utilized 2 great firms for different sides of the business, and everyone was supportive and understanding. And when it came down to, we're like, hey guys, I'm also leaving, and I'm going to take a bit of leave to be with my kid. Everyone was like, we understand, we plan for this. We will work with these folks within your shop and make sure that when you come back, you're right, to your point, you're not coming back to like, hey, the deals blew up, or hey, like XYZ is on your plate, get excited. So luckily, I don't think all those deals closed on time. I think they actually spread out. But that was something I was very appreciative of, and that scenario was leaning on your outside counsel. And if you're out, and if you are at a firm, lean on your coworkers, lean on your staff, lean on your boss, and have them pick it up for the time being. I mean, obviously it's reciprocated at some point in the future. You're going to probably do the same thing for them. And that's a team. That's working for a team.
Yeah, for sure. And communicating. And I think that falls on the manager first of the employee who's going out to be, how are you feeling? What can I do to help? I think that communication piece is super important, because it is challenging and it is scary. And I think a lot of anxiety, we're already anxious people, right? We talked about that. A lot of anxiety about going out, about coming back. And so I think, that will be something that separates the good managers from the not so good, is how they communicate during that transition and make it, a safe spot to come back to.
I love working at Lawtrades, and Karina loves working at her firm, but it sounds like Uber's pretty great. So are you hiring?
We are hiring, actually. So in a lot of different roles, not just specific to my team. Uber is great. I mean, I've been here a long time. There's been ups and downs. There's been, things in the news that people see. Obviously, we've been through the roller coaster, but I like to say I've been through Uber 1.0. I've been through Uber 2.0. Not sure where we're at now, but it's always been actually like a supportive work environment. For myself, I've always had a supportive management chain. I've had supportive business clients, and people who really advocated for my career. So it's I'm lucky. I always say I feel very lucky to be there and to continue to be there. And I think having such a large team is super important to me at this point. I've got about 65 legal professionals, and we're hiring a bunch more. So if you're interested, let me know. But it's been a great work environment. So
the founders are listening to this podcast. Right? Like, Matt, what did you just say?
I'm gonna have some resumes coming my way on LinkedIn. But no, I encourage that, honestly. It's been a great place to work, especially on the legal side. We've got great. I'll put a plug for Tony West and Tammy Alberon and my own boss, Katie Waitsman. It's a super supportive and inclusive culture. We spend a lot of time not just on diversity pieces, but the inclusivity pieces. So, which is a big part of the conversation that doesn't always get talked about. But creating a safe work environment, I think, is a super important part of it all.
That's awesome. And I would say Karina too, right? I mean, you're working also because I'm here. I mean, you're working in an environment where your manager, same thing, right? They transitioned you slowly into this role. And I mean, I would say like that's what we all strive for, right? You coming back into a role where they're just like, hey, be a mom and we'll get you there, but let's enjoy the ride while we can, right?
Right, exactly. I came back to, I mean, there were a little bit of things, I mean, because I'm transactional, I'm not litigation, so there weren't, like extended things going on. But still, I mean, there were a couple things that were, continuing that I left off on, and, my manager who picked up a lot of this stuff when I was gone, was great, and he eased me back into it. It was like a couple things here and a couple things there. And so, I've been back for like a month now, and they're still kind of like slowly transitioning me. So it's really great. And then we also have a litigation department too in our firm. And they do the same thing with, litigation. Like, people are happy to pick up other people's hearings that come back from maternity leave. So I think that's just great, like leaning on your coworkers, and, eventually, you'll do the same thing for them.
Litigation with, this is me just selfishly telling a story because you just reminded me of it. Karina, do you remember I had a case that was set to go to trial in November? Do you remember that?
Yes.
It was federal court. I won't say the jurisdiction, I won't say the judge, but I was in federal court. I remember I had to file a motion to continue, and in it I was freaking out because I was like, well, is having a kid around that time good cause? Like, can I get a continuance?
Yeah.
And all my clients at the time were like, yeah, that's fine. So I remember calling up the attorney, and I'm not going to out anybody here, but I remember calling the attorney, and they ended up kind of playing games, not because he didn't understand the gravity of the fact that we were having our first child, but because I'm a guy. Because he was like, well, you're not the one having the kid. And that was something I think was something
That's tough.
Great.
Yeah.
And eventually it's something probably, if you're listening to, if you're a guy, not to change, because it's not, I never want to have it where it's, the father is anywhere above the mother in these scenarios. But if you're a father and you're taking paternity leave, or you're trying to take paternity leave, you're trying to take you're trying to be an equal parent, right? The industry, for some reason, isn't incredibly kind to that. It should be. It should be very encouraging of dads being dads and moms being moms. But I did file that motion, and I did get the continuance, and then I quit that firm.
Yeah, that it leaves a bad taste, right? It's hard to deal with those situations. I know even in my husband doesn't work in the legal field. He works at DocuSign now, but he was at a different company when we had my first child, and he didn't get paternity leave. So he had to take 2 weeks vacation. I think many probably that will listen to this podcast might not have a paternity leave option, and it's still leave is something hard that I advocate for. It's something super important to me, and often I probably think about it more on the maternity leave side, but on the paternity leave, it's a big piece of it, because that ultimately goes to the health of the mother as well, right? That they have a support system. It's important to the father as well to bond and obviously have that time, but it also goes to how we're setting up, moms for success in all of this. And Jackie had to take 2 weeks. Yeah. We had a NICU baby, for 6 weeks that I was just on my own with there daily, because he had to take 2 weeks vacation, and then he was back to work. So, I feel for you. I think that the norm still is, and even if it's given, even if there is some type of leave, I still feel like dads especially have that thought going through their mind of, do I take it? Do I really need to? Am I going to be judged for taking it? And that's some of what I was talking about with my own team of take the leave, right? Like, this is we are lucky to have the policy that we have, take it, no one's going to judge you. And I think it's important to take it, because I think it's also important to send a message that this should be the expectation. It's a partnership. They should be supporting each other and should be able to have that time together, with their child. So I think that's a big part of this conversation that I agree with you, Matt, probably, gets lost or placed secondary, to talking about, the mother and from that perspective. But I think challenges for sure that you have to think about and deal with as well.
Absolutely. Guys, we are rounding the end of this podcast.
I want
to say thank you so much, both of you, for being here. This has been a really good discussion. I've taken a lot out of this, again, because Karina and I are both new parents. Gosh, so Maureen, how do people find you? Do they find you on social media, via email? You tell me, because I'm sure people have a lot of questions.
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably easiest for this space. Maureen Frangopoulos on LinkedIn, but yeah, feel free to shoot me a message. We are hiring, as I mentioned, so if you're interested in that path, I'm always willing to talk to people. So, but yeah, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find I am on TikTok. I've got like 8 videos, and they're mostly dog videos, but feel free to send me.
You should have led this conversation with that. I feel guilty about talking about TikTok.
No, I feel like I've got to get ahead of it, because my son's 7. Like, he's gonna, a couple years from now, he's gonna be in that, hey mom, I want a cell phone. He's gonna want to be on this stuff. So I feel like I've got to figure it out. So yeah, I make the occasional puppy video and stick it on there. My husband makes fun of me, so.
Karina,
I know. I was scrolling through my phone yesterday. Look, we have a golden doodle, and he's like insane, like the most insane dog ever. I think that it's probably honestly like more work to take care of the dog than the baby. He's that
Matt
crazy.
and I were talking
But I
about
was
that. Yeah.
scrolling through my videos, and I have like him doing all these like crazy things, like ripping apart a pillow and like running up and down the stairs. I'm like, I could make a TikTok video out of all these.
I
We
know.
could go
The
viral.
dog
I
videos
know.
get a lot of traction. I'll tell you, they get a lot
I
of
know.
likes. So.
That's so fun. Well, Karina, yourself too, thank you so much for being on here. Thank you so much for taking the time. And honestly, thank you for being the best mom.
Oh.
No.
Maureen, not to say you're not an awesome mom as well.
No, you.
I've got a
She
soft
gets
spot
that
for
title
Karina.
in your life.
Karina, now for everyone that wants to reach out to you, I'm sure the same. You'll see a lot of comments and questions to yourself. How do they reach you? On LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think best for me probably is LinkedIn as well. You can find me, Karina Margolis. Maybe I'll make I'll make an appearance in one of your TikTok videos coming up. If I'm allowed
Yes,
to.
I wasn't part of this podcast and now I'm pumped.
See, I've helped you through this podcast. Karina's going to make a TikTok with you.
That was actually the point.
I know, right?
This podcast was an elaborate ruse to get Karina on the TikTok. That's what it was. No, guys, thank you so much again, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.